All right. We are right at the top of the hour. So just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. This session is being recorded and the full recording will be emailed to you either later this week or early next week. Additionally, if you have any questions about FLA membership or policy, please take note of Craig's contact information at the end of the presentation and don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Craig to tell you all the great things we've been doing at Forest Landowner Association with policy this year.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon, good morning to the West Coasters. Um, very glad for those of you that have been able to join. Even more happy or for those of you that are already members of FLA, partners, or people just interested in what we're doing, because there's a lot of value in emphasizing and engaging the work and the critical role that landowners play not just in forestry, but also in our national economy. So, very excited to walk through some of the work that we've done over the past year with the federal government. And certainly none of this is from us acting alone, but working with partners and certainly making sure that our members are front and center when it comes to engaging with their policymakers. And for those that aren't familiar with the Forest Landowner Association, we are a national organization, and the core of our membership are landowners, in particular, multi generational family businesses. And we are, I believe, in 45 states across the country. So, very unique membership, but all with similar goals, wanting certainty to continue their working forest for generations to come. So again, thank you for being here. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the best way that I like to kick off our conversations about policy is just painting the picture of the political landscape. And I know that many of you are familiar how Republicans have a trifecta of control in Washington, D.C. And when I say that, I mean with Congress, both chambers, with both the House and the Senate, as well as the White House having a Republican as the president, but also the Supreme Court having a conservative majority. That being said, Republicans are in the driver's seat, yet with the very thin margins that they are operating on, it means that Democrats still have a very important and influential voice, especially when a lot of the political fights that have happened within their own respective parties. You see the Freedom Caucus, which is the more conservative faction for Republicans, fighting against the moderates, and likewise the same with Democrats, which has forced the policymaking to be very different than it is historically. And while there are still routinely bipartisan pieces of legislation that come out, we have seen a flurry of executive action, executive orders, Congressional Review Act, as well as even discharge petitions, which is a tool for the minority or those who feel that their policy objectives are not being listened to by leadership. And most importantly, even a full government shutdown that did set a historic number of days. That being said, the Forest Landowner Association, we have not pivoted, we have not adjusted our talking points, but we have prioritized meeting with influential members of Congress, as well as agencies that do have jurisdiction over the policy priorities that do matter to landowners and their ability to keep their forest as forest. And so for us, making sure that we are engaging both with the executive branch, including the White House, as well as with Congress, is a key part of that recipe for success. So, what are our policy priorities? And for us, these have not changed over the past few years, and they all work together simultaneously. They're interconnected to ensure that these working forests can remain healthy and resilient, as well as productive. And so, disaster recovery, market opportunities, private property rights, and tax reform are those four pillars that we look to when it comes to decision making and policy development when we're working with these legislators and agency officials. Disaster recovery, making sure that landowners have the tools that they need to be able to recover and replant after natural disaster strikes. Market opportunities, ensuring that both traditional and emerging opportunities for landowners exist so that they and their forests can be economically viable. Private property rights, where we can preserve landowners' ability to best manage their land as they see fit and derive economic value from their land. And finally, with tax reform, promoting tax treatment for landowners to be fair and equitable, as well as strengthening the ability for family businesses to survive. So, it's been a very busy year, especially with a new administration, a new session of Congress, and FLA has been across the board in DC, but also across the country, not just engaging with members of Congress in the halls of their legislative buildings and agency buildings, but even in their forest and on their property. And so for us, having these meaningful conversations, both with traditional agencies and representatives, but also with emerging opportunities within the administration and with executive branch agencies. So the Environmental Protection Agency has been a very key one when it comes to talking about biomass opportunities. The Forest Service ensuring that the tools that exist can best help landowners when it comes to technical assistance in managing their property. With Treasury, working with them on tax guidance and technical assistance for tax measures that we are developing or have worked on with Congress. U.S. Department of Agriculture, when it comes to the treatment of agricultural producers, ensuring that timber producers, landowners, have those same opportunities as others. And certainly with the White House, when it comes to elevating the need for a lot of policy solutions for landowners to make sure that these multi-generational businesses are able to stay in operation for generations to come. And when it comes to congressional meetings, we have certainly done our job when it comes to engaging with a lot of the influential members of Congress, but certainly with states that have a heavy focus and heavy presence of working forest, and certainly making sure that with committees of jurisdiction, namely the agriculture committees, but also the committees that oversee tax and natural resource and public lands measures, that we're engaging with them and leadership of both chambers so that they know that we're a trusted source to work with, but also that they're aware of the priorities that we're focused on and that we're working with them to develop. And so traditionally, when it comes to our engagement, the pinnacle of these meetings are during our fly-ins, which typically happen early in the year during February, where we bring up our board and other interested parties to meet with agency officials as well as with members of Congress. But I've also been really urging our membership to volunteer their time, their resources, and open up their land to bring these policymakers to their property and to really not only put a name with a face, but to transform these abstract policy ideas into a reality when it comes to these conversations that we continue to have. And so, very excited and thrilled that we continue to showcase the good work that landowners do and that their working forests provide not only for the immediate communities, but certainly for the forest products value chain and even the world. And all of this is certainly made possible not just from members of FLA, but certainly from strategic partnerships that we have leaned on, because traditionally the forestry sector has been in a silo And so while we continue to work with a lot of partners across the value chain, we've also been expanding our relationships into agriculture and even into business as well, so that we have a stronger voice with very historic and influential organizations that can really make sure that the needs of landowners are being advocated for across the full spectrum of the federal government. So, very excited to strengthen those and showcase more in the coming weeks and months as we continue to work hard to make sure that a landowner centric agenda is at the forefront of conversations for both Congress and the Trump administration. So, when we walk through legislative and regulatory wins, certainly with the infighting that has happened, as well as government shutdown, the partisan fights, not just from the budget reconciliation package, but also just from a new administration that has been very aggressive and quick to act across multiple fronts, including with government efficiency and DOGE. There have been a lot of opportunities, both on the regulatory front and on the legislative front, for landowners, working forests, and for family businesses. Wanted to touch on a few very briefly, and namely the waters of the U.S. That's something that has continued to swing with the pendulum. So very excited that that's something that they are returning to pass Supreme Court precedent. The black pine snake habitat designation, another critical win delivered by the courts. The Endangered Species Act, both with regulatory action as well as coupled with legislative action that Congress has been developing. USDA's roadless rule being rescinded to help expand more active management, as well as modernizing wildfire response and creating more of a central role for the federal government partnering with the private sector. So it's very exciting that we have had opportunities to engage with the Trump administration on a lot of these rules, rescissions, as well as proposals that they are working through. But namely, a big topic for the Trump administration and for policymakers has been on trade. And certainly, no secret to anyone that tariffs have been a big part of that and a tool that the administration has not been afraid to use. And while the using tariffs as a tool has been quite divisive, as an organization, we have been very supportive that the administration is willing and able to address a lot of these trade challenges that we have been faced with, and in particular, a focus on wanting to create a free and fair uh, trade uh, regulatory environment to make sure that America's businesses and certainly our producers are able to have a fair shake when it comes to competing on the international stage. And so, certainly, one of the top priorities for us has been related to the European Union's deforestation regulation. And while we were very happy with the news from yesterday that the European Parliament officially delayed that rule for yet another year, as well as hinting that there could be additional simplification. And while we will continue to work with partners across the value chain, we do continue to stand in opposition to the EUDR as it is written, as we see it as a violation of not only our landowners' private property rights, but certainly a trade barrier, and one that will not only hurt America's producers, but certainly will hurt the European Union's own consumers and end users as well. So, making sure that the administration is aware of this is top of mind. And we were very happy that Congressman Scott recently raised this directly with the president at a roundtable and certainly was advocating on behalf of landowners and cautioning the administration on how dangerous and misguided this regulation is coming out of Brussels, not Washington, D.C., but having a direct impact on our working forest and the men and women that steward them. Next, want to hit briefly on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And this Congress, while there has not been a lot of productivity, they have put a lot of their eggs into one basket, per se, with the budget reconciliation package, which was called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And as a reminder, the budget reconciliation process is one that bypasses the traditional route for legislation in Congress, which requires 60 votes in the Senate. And this allows a simple majority, which in turn allows it to be a partisan process. And so we were very glad that there were a significant number of policies that were included that are helpful not just for forestry, but for family businesses. And certainly, first and foremost, was the tripling and permanency of the death tax exemption, something that our members have been advocating for years, alongside others in agriculture, business, and across other sectors. So we were very thrilled that that was included, as well as preserving stepped up basis, making permanent Section 199A, expanding the use of expensing with Section 179 for equipment, uh, re reinstating the bonus depreciation policy provision, as well as preserving 1031 like kind exchanges. So, certainly a slew of tax policy in quite a large bill that we are hopeful will help provide a lot of certainty for landowners. But certainly, as many of you have heard me say, there is no silver bullet when it comes to these policy solutions that are needed to give that certainty, not just for family businesses, but for working forest. And that's why we have continued to elevate the crises that are facing forestry and certainly forest landowners to the White House and to Congress. And so a lot of these wins have just been transforming these crises from a niche discussion into a national one. And so part of that has been with leading a letter to President Trump with over 400 signatories, which included associations, both state and national, as well as businesses across the country. And that helped directly lead to dialogue with the White House in two different meetings that we were invited to discuss what those solutions are, where it isn't just disaster recovery, it isn't just developing new markets, and it's not just tax certainty. It's an all of the above approach, and it is urgently needed. And soon after, the White House released a proclamation, not only taking action on the trade front, but highlighting that the domestic timber is a critical resource for national security. And that was also related to a previous executive order that had been released in March of this year, which highlighted the need to boost our domestic timber production. And while at the time when that executive order came out, there was concern among industry. And we used that as an opportunity to engage not just with the White House, but also with U.S. Department of Agriculture to help work with them to narrow that scope on public land to wildfire risk-prone areas, as well as opening it up to make sure that domestic timber production falls with private forest landowners. And so this has been a great opportunity where the Department of Treasury has recognized that the work that we are doing in the tax front in particular with the Disaster Reforestation Act, which would modernize but also correct the tax code when it comes to deducting timber losses and timber damages from natural disasters. They have recognized that fixes like that, in particular, would help make sure that the executive order's goal of boosting our domestic timber supply production could be realized, which is fantastic. Uh, Coupling with that, of course, has been reforming programs that already exist. And the Emergency Forest Restoration Program is one of the very few programs that do exist for landowners in response to a natural disaster. And we're very glad that there is not just a dual track, but a multi track for that legislative reform to get across the finish line next year. And so it has already been included in multiple packages, as well as being pushed aggressively by the bill sponsors in both chambers of Congress. Uh, in addition, having members of Congress, both on the House side and the Senate side, highlight a lot of these crises facing private forest landowners and their working forest, where we've had Senator Tuberville uh, be videoed by Forbes and having quite a large audience. That's certainly something that's welcomed, where he's speaking about the need for fixes like the Disaster Reforestation Act, as well as with Congressman Buddy Carter in the House, where we had a joint op-ed with our CEO, Scott Jones, and him, which was published in the Washington Times, and being able to continue to elevate not just the challenges that face our sector, but the common sense and even bipartisan solutions that we are working on. And at the end of the day, none of those would be possible without a robust coalition of associations and certainly our members that have provided endorsements as well as just partnerships and furthering those legislative ideas. And for the Disaster Reforestation Act, from just a few years ago, where we had 20 organizations, we're now to over 100, both state and national, and not just forestry, but agriculture as a whole, business, conservation. They all see the need that when these family businesses suffer, when they aren't able to get a return on their land and keep it economically viable, there is no replacing the benefits that they provide. So, very excited that those continue to be elevated, as well as finding new ways for us to fight for landowners to have more tools and to be more broadly recognized as an agricultural commodity with the timber that they produce. And so recently we led a letter to the administration, in particular to USDA and Treasury, outlining how, while we support these farmer bridge payments, that timber producers, in particular the landowners that manage those lands, should be eligible for those funds as well, because they are just as vulnerable to these unfair trade practices and the volatility in the markets, and therefore should also be receiving payments. So lots of great things that have already been in the works. And again, being able to elevate these issues directly to the president, as well as with senior leadership on the Hill, has certainly resulted in an appetite for wanting to work with our members, ensuring that these producers can continue to have healthy and resilient working forests so that they can provide the clean air, fresh water, and domestic supply of timber that the country and the world depend on. So, looking ahead to 2026, it's always tough looking into a crystal ball. I think that we can all agree that in an election year, it is very typical for legislative activity to slow down. But given the recent elections that have happened, we have noticed a trend that is historic where the party that is not in control certainly has a lot of wins And so I believe that 2026 will align with that historical trend where Democrats will have a very successful midterms. This could result in the House flipping to Democrat control, potentially the Senate as well, although they have a much more favorable map. And so, being mindful of that, there will be an appetite for Congress to act again. And this could include another budget reconciliation package, but that's not guaranteed. And so, the work that we do will continue to make sure that it's bipartisan and bicameral as much as possible. And for a lot of these solutions for landowners, it does not see political party because both political parties begin are beginning to see the true value in landowners as the root source of our timber and wood products sector. And so these are three items that are on the horizon. The Farm Bill, which has unfortunately continued to be extended and kicked down the road since the 2018 law. And with the budget reconciliation package, there were significant provisions that were included that are helpful for the farmer safety net programs. And so any farm bill that will be released, which it sounds like the House Agriculture Committee chairman would like to release a skinny farm bill by the end of next month. And so our hope is that this is something that there will be a renewed appetite by their Democratic counterparts to move this bill forward. Because while there were significant changes included in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, touching not just farmer safety net programs, but also nutrition, there is quite a strong argument to make sure that the other titles of the Farm Bill have the reforms and changes that are desperately needed because a lot has happened since 2018. And there are certainly a lot of tools that we have advocated for alongside a lot of our like minded associations and partners to really help boost and support our working forest. And so we're very optimistic that that is something that will be acted on. In addition, the Fix Our Forest Act is something that both the House and the Senate have been actively working on. The House did pass this comprehensive package very quickly at the beginning of this year in January. It was one of the first major pieces of legislation, and it started to collect dust in the Senate for a while until recently, where even during the government shutdown, the committee was acting on this. And we were very glad that the Senate Agriculture Committee's consideration of this shed more light on the issues facing private forest landowners, where Senator Tupperville and Senator Warnock talked about the Disaster Reforestation Act. But even Senator Fisher and Senator Lujan had an amendment adopted for legislation that we have worked with them on to reform the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. So we anticipate that this will be something that will receive a full vote in the Senate, get kicked back to the House, and have final passage at some point. But finally, with taxes, there's always appetite for taking a close look at tax policies. And this is something that we have worked very closely with the administration, but also with members of Congress and the House Ways and Means Committee and Senate Finance Committee to really promote ideas and proposals that will give long-term certainty to landowners while we develop other critical tools like crop insurance to make sure that there are those recovery mechanisms to give them certainty during the good times and the bad, while also bolstering their ability to compete as family businesses. And so this is something that we've received indication that could move one way, shape, or form, be it through a budget reconciliation process or through a bipartisan tax extenders package, which unfortunately was not coming to fruition this year as both chambers of Congress are recessing through the end of the year today. And so there's certainly a lot of opportunity on the horizon, despite it being a midterm year next year. And even despite the political infighting and the partisan battles, we're optimistic that there's plenty of appetite to make sure that we're sustaining the men and women, our landowners, and our timber producers so that they can continue to have their working forest be healthy and productive for generations to come. And so, a key part of helping supplement our work on the policy front is to make sure that we're not only investing in these members of Congress, but we're transforming them from passive supporters into active and proactive champions for working forests. And so, again, this is something that we work across the aisle on. We certainly do focus on members of leadership, be it for the chambers of Congress or for their parties, but also for these key committees as well that oversee disaster recovery, market opportunities, private property rights, and tax reform. And so without this, it would be one less tool in our belt to be able to really drive home the stories, the challenges, and most importantly, the solutions that are needed. And without the ability to participate in a political action committee environment, we would be on the menu. And when you're not at the table, you are on the menu, and you'll either be directly or indirectly hurt by policies that are misguided. And so appreciate all those that have given us the tools we need and the ability to participate in a lot of these candid discussions with policymakers to ensure that the right people will stay in Washington, D.C., but also so that we can really make sure that they are fighting for forestry and for the landowners who manage the majority of our forests in the United States. And so, with that, really appreciate everybody that has been able to join this. A quick recap on the important work that we have done on the federal level for private forest landowners, for family businesses, and for working forests. None of this would be possible without our members, and certainly without our trusted partners in DC and across the country. Many of those are state forestry associations, and we are very glad to have those as trusted partners and boots on the ground for when we need to tell the story of the importance of these working forests and the critical role that they play, not only for the environment, but also for the economy. So like Michelle said earlier, we would welcome the opportunity to engage more, see how we can be a better partner. And for those that are not members, we certainly would challenge you to contact us to learn more about the Forest Landowners Association and about how we can fight for you in Washington, D.C. So thank you very much for this opportunity to present on some of the important work that we've done and the important work that we've helped influence in Washington, D.C. on behalf of our working forests. Hope you all have a Merry Christmas and look forward to working with you more in some capacity in the new year.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Bye, everyone.